housing. Housing for me is really about establishing a much broader ecology. It's actually a form of urban design, because what you do in housing is synthesize many forces to create a habitat, to create dwelling, and dwelling that's appropriate for people. So in a sense, it is a whole ecology that makes for appropriate housing. And housing is, of course, dwelling. And when we use the word affordable housing, I think we kind of sometimes limit ourselves. What we should be talking about is adequate housing, because the word adequacy, I think, resonates across many factors. So it's adequacy in terms of the spatial dimensions, the space required, adequacy in terms of access to livelihoods, access to amenities. Adequacy also means cultural adequacy in ways spatial practices are played out. So really, adequacy is a much larger rubric by which we can measure housing, perhaps. So instead of just saying affordable housing, which is one metric, affordability in terms of finance, perhaps, adequacy resonates much more broadly and pushes us into thinking in productive ways about housing as an ecology that we create, and an ecology to support life, to support the lives of communities and people and their coexistence. In housing, of course, there are interesting challenges, because housing, besides really forming over 70% of the fabric of any settlement, is also something that one has to look at across many scales. So the scalar question becomes really important. The unit is one component where we look at ways as architects that we can spatially make the units more interesting, more efficient, more productive, but also how the unit is aggregated, finally, to create a cluster, to create a site plan, to create an entire community, to create the fabric of the city. So the success of a good housing project is one which can seamlessly address the scalar question all the way from the unit to how it's aggregated to create another array of spaces which come from the aggregation, and then how it sits within a broader settlement in robust ways. So for the competition, I think it's really an exciting challenge, because we're looking at small units, but we're looking at an incredibly broad spectrum of aspirations that the competition has laid out for everyone, the 16 or 18 points that go all the way from the design of the unit to furniture, to storage, to materiality, to challenges of maintenance, to how it gets aggregated, how it forms densities. And really, the challenge is how to make it work across all those questions. How the unit, in its fine-tuned articulation, whether it's in section or in plan, whether the margins of the house are expandable, whether the house can serve as a multi-purpose space for livelihoods during the day, can have varied associations depending on the kinds of people, the demography that lives there, but also how questions of materiality, of maintenance, of life cycle of materials, of the ease with which people can engage with it, the expansion, the maintenance of their homes, the way people might relate to the house in terms of their own identity formation, and then how it can be aggregated to create spaces which are safe, spaces that create a sense of community, spaces that allow for a spectrum of uses, allow for fluctuations on a temporal scale, for festivals, that all bring community together. So in short, I think the challenge of the competition is how, as designers, we are mindful of the scalar question. We are mindful of what society empowers us to do, which is the articulation of space, and how we can imagine all of that together to create this broader, robust ecology in which better lives can be lived.